And please welcome Susanne Demel and her panel.
Just got stuck in getting the microphone on. Happy to be here. Thank you, Kai, for handing over. I will introduce to you our panelists for the next panel and ask them to come up here. Someone's forgotten his mobile phone, I think. Maybe you can hand it over. So, please welcome with me. First of all, we have Anna Christmann, who's still on the microphoning. So Nico Kelling, come up here, and also Frederick Struckmeier. And we have Anna Christmann on this panel. Please come round. I think we are only 4, so yep. And then we take Anna here. She's still getting her microphone. So I take the chance to introduce you two. Frederick, you're the head of quantum application group of the Trumpf group. You're involved with quantum computing for quite some time. Oh, Anna, would you like to come a little nearer? So we. All right, great. Then we have Nico Kelling. You're head of the Corporate Center of Excellence for Artificial Intelligence at Infineon Technologies since 2020, and already have a long career in the semiconductor industry for some time. So we've got a slightly different perspective than from Trumpf, I suppose. And then we have Anna Christmann. Very happy to have you, Anna. I will introduce you shortly too, although I suppose many here in the room already know you. You're a member of the German Parliament for the Green Party, and since 2022, you're also Commissioner for the Digital Economy and Startups at the Federal Government and Federal Government Coordinator for German Aerospace at the Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Climate Action. So welcome all 3 of you. And we've got a little scary title of the Deep Tech Dilemma. Is Germany poised for success or stuck in innovation quicksand? So I hope we can give this a little more optimistic spin. And for that, I think I start with Frederick and also asking Nico, how are Trumpf and Infineon harnessing the potential of deep tech technologies such as AI, and especially what are your plans for quantum technology and computing in particular? Frederick, would you like to start?
Yes, sure. Let's divide this up into the AI part and the quantum part. And Trumpf is a big machine tool manufacturer, and AI has been in our development pipeline for many years now, and it's been introduced into many serious products in the different departments that we have, mostly, of course, in robotics and specifically in machine vision. And it's quite more mature than all the quantum technologies. On the quantum side, we're much more involved because we have different approaches here. For one, the startup Quant, which is 100% Trumpf owned, which is making a photonic hardware platform for quantum sensing and quantum computing. Then we're invested in different startups through the Trumpf venture. For example, HQS, which is a quantum software startup from Karlsruhe. And then also there's my group, where we look at the different applications that quantum computing especially might have for the core business of Trumpf, which is robotics and laser technology.
That sounds interesting. We can have a little closer look later on. Nico, what is it for Infineon?
Yeah, I think first of all, it's fundamental technologies for the way forward. Let's start with AI. AI is now, it's in the applications, obviously, already today. So that's what we use in what we're doing inside, in the design, in the manufacturing, in the go-to-market of the products, using it to optimize, streamline the processes, but also as a semiconductor manufacturer, we're enabling many of these applications with the chips. So we bring AI, enable AI in these applications, especially in the edge chipsets for edge applications of AI. So this is already today. And of course now the recent fast acceleration in generative AI, of course, brings additional new momentum in using AI in development processes, but also in making knowledge accessible, just to name two examples. On the quantum side, also here, likewise, there's multiple different dimensions. First of all, there's a big impact on cryptography. So we are quite engaged in post-quantum cryptography, preparing today already for mechanisms to be robust against these possibilities then. Secondly, also here, likewise, as an enabler for the industry, we are quite active in several of these different technologies, being it ion traps, or semiconductor or superconductors also that we have there. And last but not least, also future applications, managing complex problems, supply, demand, matching, or also material research.
Mm-hmm. So we've already heard some examples of where your companies are active in or how you use the technology. Anna, the Ministry for Economic Affairs and Climate Action, of course, looks at the spread of these technologies and the use of the technologies in the width of the German industry and economy. So, what are the current government policies and incentives to stimulate the development and the adoption of AI and quantum technologies?
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm happy to be here. Sorry for the little delay because of the plenary sessions in the Bundestag. But I think it's a really good thing to have both technologies here today on one summit, AI and quantum, because I think there are some things that are maybe similar in some way. Of course, not right in the technology itself, but in the kind of how we develop technology and what we call deep tech today in Germany and Europe, I'd say. And I mean, what we've seen on the technology side is that it's not for sure. There's no guarantee that Germany or Europe plays a strong role in the development and in the application, especially of these technology. And we have seen that with artificial intelligence, I mean, it has come a long way. We need to remember this because now it's just like it's everywhere, and people start to think it's normal that AI is in every device they use. But like it's 20, 30, 40 years ago, we were at a totally different stand for AI. So I think what we've learned from that development is one thing, there might be just some point in time where the application starts and then it's faster than we might think today. So that is something that we also should keep in mind when it comes to quantum. And the second thing, it's really necessary not to only have the expertise on the research and science side, but also on the application side and on the industry side, because that is where we see in AI that, of course, we have more companies in other places of the world right now compared to Germany. So to your question, and then I want to finish very quick for this first question, what we see is that it's very important that we have strong industry and companies in these technologies engaged, and also new players like startups that are part of the game. So what we try is really to foster the transfer from the technology into the application, to have a developed venture market for deep tech in Europe and Germany. That's true for all technologies, and to really be an anchor customer from the public side, not only to give money, but that it's important on how you give the money. So that is, for example, something that we did with the Quantum Initiative, where we have startups developing now quantum computers like for the public state. And I think that is a principle that is very important.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that the being an anchor customer, that has already gone quite far, or are these just more like pilots?
It's in the beginning, I'd say. We have this with the DLR initiative that was quite new, and of course there are also some questions coming with it, with IP, where should the IP be? There are still things we need to work on that is really working to develop an ecosystem. But in AI, for example, also we are starting right now, Baden-Württemberg has started to be a customer of a German AI company, and we are working on that now also on the federal level. We had the Meseberg meeting for that, where that was a jointly identified goal to be more a customer also on the federal level. So I think it's coming more and more, but there are things to learn for the public side on how this works.
So maybe we ask again the private sector on their expectations towards the German government. So what is actually, how do you see the role of the government in maybe supporting you in using and developing these technologies and business models based on new technologies? So what's your take on that?
So I guess mostly I can speak on the quantum side here. And for most of these technologies, it's true that they don't beat their classical counterparts right now. Right? That's just not true. We can't build a quantum computer that can, on an industrial problem, beat classical compute. And therefore, it's going to be an investment for the next 5 to 10 years still. And therefore, I believe it's quite rational to ask government for further applied research help, and also one that is quite long term. So we had the Handlungskonzept on quantum technologies early this year, and I think that was a necessary signal for all the industry players to be assured that this is a long-termish plan, and it was somewhat slightly countered with the budget cuts just a couple of months later. But that is one side of it, and then think other parts are that we probably need a better coordination of the different players from politics, from academia, from industry. We currently, as well on the German level and then on the European level, we have multiple consortia where sort of people from the outside ask, what are they doing? How are they different from each other? Couldn't we sort of have a more, probably not single platform, but sort of fewer platforms where it's more clear who's doing what, and that would probably get to better coordination of the whole topic.
Maybe because you mentioned the cuts on the budgets for the development of projects, how do you figure, does this influence also the goals on the action plan on quantum that that were set out in the action plan until 2026? Do you think that will influence that?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously, we are also not very happy that we have right now budget limitations in different sectors, and quantum is one part of them. We have also others that are difficult right now because we are coming from a very high level of budget where money was in for fighting like Corona and all the crises that we had. So now we are in a different situation than several years before, and that's in general, of course, a challenge for these kind of sectors. But what we see is that, of course, also with a budget that is already spent in this sector, we are now, there are now the companies working with that money and developing like their different technologies, and that is also something that we think is important, that we have like different types for quantum computers that are now developing in these kind of startups. So it's not that we had to cut any project down with like the budget cut, but that it would have been money that would be already there for the next step. That is not the case now, so we will have to see over the next years what the next steps will be, and that is what you were referring to, and that is something that we are very aware of, that that was the first step now of the initiative, with the parts that are doing in our ministry and in the Ministry of Research, and we need to see what can we build up on this first step. And this is something that we are discussing in a coordinated group in Germany. There exists like a Beirat for quantum technologies, like a council where we are from the governmental side and where there's industry. So that is really an important point for us to find now the way forward and to look what is the German position in this and what happens on the European level. And of course, in the end, there will be the question, will we need something like one European consortia for the one European quantum computer? I think this is still a question that's not answered yet. So, of course, more budget is always better than less, but it's not that we had to stop anything right now. It's just we need to see, like in the next years, where the next budget for next steps will come from.
Mm-hmm. So maybe, and one question also on top of that, because we were talking about, well, we need a lot of a big budget, and companies also need to invest themselves, so they need some long-term perspective. What else, apart from government funding, do you think is really important for companies to invest or in these developments?
Sure. Well, it's quite, sort of classical thinking on investment decisions. Do we see a market for this? How do we go to market? And all these kind of things, they need to be settled on. If there's no business case, not even sort of in a 5-year perspective, that'll be very different, very difficult discussions of just sort of pushing on tech when you don't really know what kind of products this is going to lead to and what kind of revenues to expect. But I think that is something that for sort of the quantum sensing and quantum compute side, the general markets exist. It's not a totally different market because we now have quantum compute. We already have compute as a market, and we have sort of sensor technology and people using sensors for different things as a market generally. And quantum sensors will at some point in time do things that sensors with classical physics, based on classical physics, cannot do. But the basic measurement principles, they exist, and people have sort of questions that they need to answer with sensors, and that market already exists. It's not like, you sort of, you have a mobile phone and all of a sudden you can build apps for mobile phones, and then nobody had done that, and it was kind of like the question of how do people even use mobile phones, and I think you can clearly see that sort of from iPhone version 1 and the very early Android releases. Apps have changed a lot, and the way people use their mobile phones have changed a lot, and it's probably, this is sort of a question you can always debate on what is a different market. But I feel like this is not so much true for most of the quantum technologies. I guess we have quite a good understanding for the stage that we're in technology-wise as to how this is going to go.
Mm-hmm. So Nico, how is your take on that? What are you expecting from the government? What do you think is crucial in addition to government activity for you to invest in those markets?
Thank you for the question. I think it's some things have been already said, that there's a good ecosystem that is starting to develop, and there's a strong support for that. I think obviously it's a deep tech topic that needs a long breath, so it's important that we don't slow down, that we stay on this track, and that we maybe even accelerate a little bit going forward. But maybe other topics also important. There's many different perspectives on the topic, so it is important to really align the different views and to come one strategy that combines the application side but also the hardware side and brings them together. That we work on bringing examples into practice, so we have showcases that inspire and accelerate these topics as well. But also a third dimension that I would like to address is also that we need to look at the people, talent that we need to address starting early, maybe even at school, and upskilling in the corporates and companies as well. So this needs to be pushed forward as well, so that when the application comes ready, that we also have the teams that can turn it into applications. In the end, we have to make sure that we are able to to build at least the key components, and that we can bring it into applications. That's where we typically fall a little bit short. There's some strong parts already in the enabling side, for instance, but then to really bring it from research and academia into a real business application, and that needs talent on the different perspectives, from physics to engineering, but also the business side, obviously.
So talent is I think, an overall topic that's probably true for all the technology areas we are talking about. Anything you wish from the government on that side? I mean, I know from AI, for example, there was an initiative to get 100 more professors in Germany. Now it's another 150, but then there's all these excellence clusters that we have built. What else could we do to increase the number of available experts?
Yeah, I think one important thing is to create this common inspiration that we have, this common aligned strategy that creates a certain pull, but then also to create this visibility, how this progresses, showcase examples, be present there, that we bring this also into the public, and I think this will be an attracting point, that we showcase where this is important in the future, why it's so crucial to be strong in these fields. And today it's important to have a purpose in the work, and I think that's something that we can and should elaborate on and pull.
Yeah, maybe just to add on this, because like workforce for quantum is also part of our action plan that we have for quantum. So I totally agree that is a really important point, as we see it in other areas too. And in quantum, it's like we are in a stage where people do not really know what that is and why they should maybe learn about that in an early stage. So I think that is your point in having showcases, because it's hard to imagine what quantum in what cases it will help us in the end. So I agree that both is important, that we like have also possibilities at the universities to start studies in these fields, and I think that's now a way also to develop like the studies itself, how they should look like at the universities. That is something that, of course, we will discuss also with the Länder, where they need to have that with the universities. So there is a combination, I think, of many things, and of course also the general goal to get more people also internationally to Germany. Of course, that's something that we are supporting right now very strongly, that it's easier for international talents also to come to Germany. And I just want to really to underline this point, that we are in a stage right now with quantums where we really still have the chance to also be the developers of the hard tech side, and what we don't have so much with AI, where we now need to see where we can have the infrastructure for the data centers to run the models, and where we are thinking right now, for example, on the federal level, how we can support a strong data center infrastructure in Germany that can be used for AI developments and for AI models. So and there we still have the chance to have it in a different way. So that's something that we definitely want to support.
And I would support maybe this aspect also, that there is a certain correlation between the AI and the quantum topics. Yeah? Obviously, both deal with probabilities and so on, and we have to bring these topics in there. And one topic will support the other topic as well, as far as talent and experts are concerned. Yeah.
Talents are something that are crucial for both, but also I think access, as you said, access to infrastructure on which you can run things, that's also something that doesn't come natural for both things. Although discussing the current megatrend generative AI, we have seen there are already applications out there that are really easily accessible. But of course, they won't be suitable for every purpose that you would like to use the technology for. So what role does generative AI play for engineering and the semiconductor industries? Both of you.
I can start. Of course, that's also a very important topic. It's not clear in every different facet yet, but for sure, mid and long term, there will be substantial impact on that. In doing certain design tasks, we already have today many practical examples in coding space, which somehow also relates, but the same approaches will be transferred also to more deeper chip development methodologies as well. So that there will be a substantial role in accelerating the design, offloading some, also saving time, obviously, in the development process, which will bring solutions to market faster. So it's quite a wide range. Also, what it can support is in the quality and the validation and verification of these things, automating some of these tasks, getting a wider scope of the coverage inside there. So there's a lot of approaches that yet need to be established to some extent, but this will reach every step, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Is it also a topic in the field you are working in?
Yes, sure. I mean, engineering can, the sort of generative frameworks that we've seen come up over the past year that can certainly help. From more advanced tasks like first level support for our customers when the machine for some reason doesn't work anymore, which is of course very specific to the machine, right? You can't just go into the general version of ChatGPT and ask it why some Trumpf machine doesn't work, and it's going to generate an answer as it always does, but sadly it's not the correct one. And that is something that we're looking at, but it's also something where we need to put a lot of our know-how into the model itself so that it can answer correctly. And then, of course, we probably don't want to give that information to different American companies. And then there's also stuff where it sort of, it can help on a very low level. If you go into an engineering workshop and you want to prototype something just very easily, generating images helps a lot. If someone has a rather crazy idea and you just prompt it into something like ChatGPT and it gives you images of that, and then you go, oh no, I meant something slightly different, but then you have an image that you can put up onto a wall and go, this is what I imagine, and everybody else can see it. And that is something very different from just saying, oh, I sort of have an idea, and it sort of triggers humans very differently if you can easily put ideas into great images. And that's a very low-level thing that you can do. So and then of course there's the whole software development where we've sort of seen machines help software developers for quite some time with different approaches. Writing code automatically is not something that's totally new, but in certain areas also generative frameworks can help.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Maybe to follow on that, I think ChatGPT, of course, is a very good example for what you said. People need to have a concrete idea what they can do with the technology, because the public debate was like, all of a sudden there is this technology and we can use it, but of course the development of the technology was already there over the last decades and especially the last years. But several years ago there was just Pepper and you could try to talk to him and it was not really a good conversation. And that is how people saw this technology, and now they can just chat with this technology. I think that is a huge step, and we see how the whole public debate has totally changed on that technology with ChatGPT. And I think that is also true for a technology with quantum computer. People can't imagine right now what that could be and what you could do with it. So it's our task even more to support it right now, because there is not this high, like this intense discussion in the public. But we shouldn't think that this moment can't be there, like in the future, maybe all of a sudden, and then everybody will realize what big impact that has.
So we haven't touched on the, I think the topic that has maybe been spoken about, that has been spoken about in the panel beforehand. Do you think also that the currently discussed AI Act as on the regulation side of things, do you think it will actually help companies or the use of AI technology, because maybe companies and users have a feeling that they are on safe ground when they following the rules in that act? Do you also think that our maybe our perception will change during the next few months, years to come? The more we use the technology itself, that we might also lose some of the fears that we have at the moment, or maybe we will be more fearful because we see the potential of the technologies. What's your take on that, Anna?
I mean, of course, it's our intention that the regulation also helps to develop an ecosystem in AI in Europe, but that won't automatically be the case, probably. But we just try right now to make sure that the regulation makes it possible to stay innovative, to have like sandboxes where you can try things out, and that only the regulation focuses on the cases that are really problematic, like for a democracy. I mean, there are some cases that are very obvious, and I think there the fear is not so much about AI, but about the concrete applications, such as social scoring, as we know it from other places of the world. I think where we are all very clear that this is nothing that we want to have in Europe. With surveillance technologies, that is something where we must very clearly see what can be part of a democratic state and what can't be part of a democratic state. Also, that is good that we have that in the regulation. And then we have the high-risk cases, I think, and I think there will be a development of what we see as high risk and what not, and we have now to start somewhere, and that we have some rules for health and for public service, for things that are like sensitive to human beings. I think that is good and helpful and can help that people have a positive perception also of the technology and the trust that is necessary. But we will have to see how this impacts innovation in the fields over the next years, I think. And we have to be very clear that when we say AI in health is a high-risk sector where you need to meet some regulation criteria, then like the robot that is part of the hospital in bringing the food or anything, something like that, that might not be high risk. So we have to really see that we don't have too many high-risk cases in the end.
Mm-hmm. Nico, yeah. What's your perception of that? Does that how do you think will the AI Act influence your activities?
Yeah, I would very much agree with a lot of the statements. First of all, that some of the applications need to be regulated, forbidden. This is obviously very necessary. I also very much hope that it will help to build this ecosystem, build applications, and build more also in Europe, and to build this into a differentiating aspect as well. There's a lot of good activities in this direction, aiming for this regulation to be adaptive and that it evolves with the technology and so on. However, right now it's still quite complex, of course. We have to make the step to make it digestible and operational, help organizations and the society to really to get the right assessments and to make it operational. If we wouldn't manage to do so, it would be hindering innovation. And that's the critical balance that we have to achieve going forward, making sure that we move forward on the innovation, but also we adapt when we see that there's things that need to be adjusted. And this is a common effort, I think. There's a chance to use it as a strong instrument to strengthen this application space, but we have to still work on it and stay on it.
Frederick, how is it affecting what you're doing with AI? Have you already taken a risk assessment on the AI Act?
No, we're not so involved in the medical sector. So, I think that most technologies take a really long time, much longer than people think, to really come to what they are. It's from the electric motor to the internet. These things were defined as a technology and were basically proven, and then it took decades until they became what they are. And I think that I can't find any reason as to why that shouldn't be true for AI or for quantum technologies. And then the sort of one line of thinking might be, let's make sure that when our perspective on what that technology is and how we use it changes, that regulation is fast enough, is sort of keeping up with the pace of what the technology is doing. Which is not saying that, don't regulate us. I'm not saying that at all. We were probably even a little late in regulating some parts of the internet. But making sure that the regulation doesn't sort of stifle or hinder that the technology is moving on, and it's probably AI is going to be used very differently than what we're doing today.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is why these sandboxes are so important, that you still have the possibility to let companies or researchers, startups try things out and say,
yes.
Okay, now the technology might change and we need to have a little bit of space to make it a little bit differently that it is to the current regulation. That is very important also for us that is possible. And also we have, of course, lots of debate right now about the foundation models, because that is also like, it is an example where new technology comes up like in parallel to the discussion about the regulation. So that was really a special process now also on the European level. And there we try now to get to a way where we have the development of foundation models differently regulated than the application, because that is something that we see is important, that you are free to start the development and don't have to meet all the regulation criteria like from day one, but that you have time till you say, okay, and now I have a model and it can be applied in sector ABC, and then the application of the regulation for these kind of sectors will be necessary. These are things that are in the debate right now, and I think there it's really true that it's important that we don't hinder like the development of new models from the first beginning, but that people have space to develop their solutions.
So I think it is also a really important point that the legislation doesn't get so complicated that no one really can manage to implement it in their companies except their big corporates. Because and that might be the last point for the discussion, as we have already mentioned in the beginning, it's probably important to have this whole ecosystem of also startups, small, medium-sized companies, and the big tech players. So Anna, how can the collaboration between German AI startups and the traditional industry be strengthened, or is it already so strong that we don't have to do anything?
No, I don't think so. No, it's especially a challenge to, as you said, strengthen the collaboration between different types of companies. And of course, we want to support the startups with their solutions that they are developing and encourage the bigger players to also use it, also the traditional industry. I think it's very important. And there I hear often still some hesitations, and people are not sure under which conditions they could use these kind of new technologies. Are they even relevant for them? I think there is still still much of learning needed also in the companies, especially SMEs often think they don't have enough data that a new technology could be relevant for them. What we, of course, try to have all our different transfer centers like Mittelstand Digitalzentrum and like several different points of contacts where we try to inform about the technology, to bring them together. Of course, we have our startup strategy where we try also to push for these kind of collaborations. Also with the public sector, I'd say we try to bring them together. So that is, I think, an ongoing task to really try always to bring all these players together, and of course to support also SMEs in using the technology. We are trying to think also about like what kind of funding they could need to make it easier, but that is something that we are still working on, what that could be, like beside all the, as I said, centers where we try to bring people together.
You mentioned in the beginning that Trumpf is also active in, with a couple of startups in the quantum field, right?
Yes.
So any advice from your side? What works for companies to collaborate with startups?
So I think the departments that I worked in within Trumpf have been very active in searching for startups on the AI side as well as the quantum side. Sometimes that's also led to investments into these companies. I think the major advantage that we see is that startups are very driven by the technology and the vision for that technology, which in big companies with all the daily business, it's sometimes hard to keep up with that, and so it's quite a new perspective usually if you bring in a startup cooperation, even if it's just sort of a 3 to 6 months project on a very specific problem. Usually you learn something from it, even if the very specific solution that they find is not something that you can put in a product in the next year. But it gives a good overview of what the technology can do, how they see their own technology and roadmap for that. So there's it sort of gives a new spin to sort of big companies usually being caught up in sort of their daily business and how it's been done for a decade.
So,
yep.
you seem to have made the same experience.
I agree to that. There's a lot of well-known and established and good working ways to work with startups, and also we do this also in the space of the quantum technology. And I think there's a lot of ways to do this for both sides' benefit and driving innovation together, bringing this forward. I think there's one flavor that I would like to bring in here, and it's also to make sure that these startups can also sustain in Europe in this ecosystem, that there is no other forces, maybe funding, access to funding, or other things, or regulation or obligations that they have to meet in early phases that would push them to other regions in the world, things like this. This is something that could be where we need to pay attention and make sure that we keep this in eye, that this ecosystem will further develop and sustain.
Thank you very much. So when I look at the watch, unfortunately, we already have to wrap it up. I think we covered quite a lot of topics. Couldn't go too deeply into everything, but I think you're still here for some time, so if someone from the audience would like to get into conversation with you, please say hi. Thank you very much for sharing your experiences and your views on how we spread these technologies within the German economy and industry. And thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
So I hand over to Kai again.